Welcome to the work session of the MARTA Board of Directors for today, March 3rd, 2022. Is everyone signed in? No issues today? I haven't touched it. I don't want Tyrene to tell me not to touch it, so. In a minute, she said, so hopefully. May I have a motion for the approval of the February 10th, 2022 work session minutes? May I have a second? Moved in second? Okay, I didn't see it. Please vote. The motion to approve the minutes of the February 10th, 2022 work session has been approved. At this time, under our chair's report, I would like to make known and announce in finding a new GM CEO. And so I find it very difficult to even say those words because I know that our previous CEO and our existing one, interim CEO, is such a advocate for mass transit. And that is what will be the most important feature that we will look for in looking and expecting a new GM CEO. With that, I'd like to, in alphabetical order, I find that it's always fair. No one can come back and say one jurisdiction had any more power or was more recognized than the other. Atlanta will be represented by Mr. Reginald Snyder. Clayton will be represented by Judge Catherine Powers. DeKalb County will be represented by Jim Durrett. Fulton County will be represented by Stacy Blakely. And I took careful consideration to make sure that each jurisdiction was represented on the search committee. The advisor for the search committee will be Judge Sears. Also, we will look to previous search committee participants from the previous search committee, which is Ms. Roberta Abdul-Salam and Mr. Robbie Ash. And the reason why is because those of us that will be part of the search committee, oh, and I forgot, the chair of the search committee will be Rita Scott. And as I said, this is very emotional. To represent the state will be Mr. Thomas Worthy. So with that being said, the committee itself will be made up of those that have not participated in search before. And that's the reason why I thought it was very necessary for us to have advisors and those that we could rely upon that understand and have been through this before and could give us advice, as well as the legal advice from our Judge Sears. Thank you. And that is my chair's report. Mr. Greenwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just two things in terms of the GM CEO report. Really, I wanted to give a brief update on Campbellton, and then I wanted to spend a few minutes with a federal update. So in terms of Campbellton, I just wanted the board to know that MARTA continues to build out the augmented bus rapid transit plan for the Campbellton Investment Corridor. We will not bring anything before this board for consideration until we have broad support from the community, the council members, and the mayor. So we just wanted to, reassure you of that. We are making progress in those conversations. Melissa, Manjeet, and I have had multiple conversations with council members and key stakeholders, and we feel very good about the progress that we're making. Although we're not voting on the Campbellton project today, we do expect significant public comment today, so I thought I'd update in that regard. Regarding the federal update, just a couple things of note. The Clayton South Lake BRT project, MARTA is excited to have recently received approval from the FTA for this project to enter into the project development phase of the Capital Investments Grants Program. So that's effective February 24th. And although it's not an implied commitment or endorsement of the project by the FTA, this is important as it means that we now have pre-award authority to incur costs for project development activities prior to grant approval and to retain eligibility for those activities for future FTA grant assistance. MARTA staff are excited to move to this phase, and we enter it with due diligence and adherence to FTA protocols. Next, I wanted to talk about the U.S. Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. They are planning a hearing on transit investment. We are honored that MARTA has the opportunities for MARTA as a transit agency under the new infrastructure law. And those are my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Moving right along. May I have a motion to go into executive session for purpose of litigation and personnel matters?
So moved. Second.
Let's vote by hand. Thank you. At this time, we will move into executive session.
I would be so honored to
executive session? Are we on? Are there any other matters to come before the work session? I do believe Mr. Greenwood wants
Ye-
to share with us.
Yes, Madam Chair, if I might, thank you. Just to note a number of upcoming events, meetings of significance. We have the MAC Committee on March 8th, the External Relations and Audit Committee on March 24th, Planning and Capital Programs on March 31st, Riders Advisory Council on April 6th, and the Board Committee on April 14th. Upcoming APTA meetings, we have the APTA Legislative Conference in Washington on March 13th to March 15th, and the APTA Transit Board Administrators Seminar on July 30th to August 2nd. That concludes those comments.
Thank you. With that being said, this concludes the March 3rd, 2022 work session of the MARTA Board of Directors. We'll see you at 1:30. Thank you.
afternoon, Madam Chair.
It is 1:30 p.m. and at this time, I call to order the March 3rd, 2022 MARTA Board of Directors meeting to order. Mr. Andrews, do we have any public comments via email or voicemail?
Yes, ma'am. We have two emails, the two public comments submitted via email, one from Laura Houston and one from Samuel Lindo, both of which speaking to the Campbellton Road proposal asking for LRT as the alternative. And those will both be submitted as part of the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. At this time, those that are here in person for our public comment section, please know that the public comments will be limited to 2 minutes each. And at this time, we would like to call Mr. Brian Sumlin.
May I go last, please? I'm not ready.
All right, Mr. Sumlin yields. At this time, we have X amount of time, and so we would like to, if that time allots, that we would definitely come back to you. Mr. Ford, Senator Vincent Ford.
I didn't know I was this far up on the list. Are you sure?
Well, I'm going by the order they were given to me. Do you want,
Okay.
do you
No,
want to?
No, I don't mind. I can talk right now. Good morning, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm here to say, to cut through a lot of the mess and make sure that we understand that this Campbellton Road LRT is an issue not just of technicalities and other kind of technical issues. It is first and foremost what? It's an equity issue. Rapid transit in Georgia, in Atlanta, goes back 150 years. 125 years ago, black people couldn't ride on the front of the streetcar. It was an instance of what? Transit injustice. And whether you know it or not, that struggle continues until this very hour. What do I mean by that? The bottom line is that Campbellton Road is a black neighborhood. It is a black neighborhood in competition with the white urbanist favored Beltline and with Emory University, a wealthy white institution. This is about equity. And you could put up all the issues. And there are going to be some folk come to this microphone who 2 weeks ago were for LRT. And something's happened in the interim, folk. Something's happened in the interim. I'm going to use my favorite phrase in my last 30 seconds. Something's rotten in the cotton. I'm asking MARTA, I'm asking the general manager, has anyone, Howard Franklin or anyone else, paid an organization or individuals on this issue? I would want you to voluntarily release that documentation. I don't want to have to do an FOI request. But there's folk getting, I think, paid over these last 2 weeks to change their opinions and to do rushed virtual meetings that were worthless over this last weekend. So, Madam Chair, thank you for an extra few seconds. I appreciate you so much. But remember, if we don't do LRT on Campbellton Road, it'll be the greatest transit injustice since black people were forced to sit on the back of the streetcar in 1896. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Senator Ford. Aline Brown.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ms. Brown.
I am a former employee of MARTA, and I have been a resident of Southwest Atlanta for over 30 years. I have three primary issues. Number one is the number of bus stops. I would like to ask that MARTA take a different perspective in terms of locating bus stops. Realize that MARTA is accommodating pedestrians, not buses, but accommodating pedestrians. And the location of bus stops is a problem when people have to stand on a muddy hillside and can't get out of the bus without climbing the hill. And it's not necessary when there is a bump out, a natural bump out just 20 feet away. Those kinds of things are at issue. And the number of bus stops, too many of them. And it holds up traffic unnecessarily. Number two is the Campbellton Road connection with Fort Mac. The section of the Fort Mac border has nothing but 2 lanes. And once Fort Mac is redeveloped, that's going to be a massive problem. I would like for the MARTA BRT or LRT, whichever it ends up being, to now work with the Fort Mac development before it is sold, so that that right-of-way can be accumulated without extra cost. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Muna Muhammad. Did I pronounce that correctly?
It's Mona.
Mona, okay, thank you.
All right. I could go?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, my name is Mona Muhammad, and I am 26 years old. I was born and raised in the Southwest Atlanta area, and even after graduating college, I came back home and opened up a small business inside of Greenbrier Mall. I'm here to discuss what we want in the community between the LRT and the BRT. As someone that's younger, I would believe that the community should have something like LRT because it brings modernization and gentrification to the community while it's still in our community's hands. LRT would be very beneficial for the community because it gives us a better future. We're gaining more value by saving time, and value comes from different job opportunities. Public transportation provides people with mobility and access to employment, community resources, medical care, and recreational opportunities in the communities across America, and MARTA is for the communities of Atlanta. The most important form of public transportation is railways. The new modern LRT can carry more riders than buses and attracts more riders with its more comfortable ride. Route 83 is what goes up and down Campbellton Road, and it's the second most used bus route daily. I attended a meeting last week, and it was discussed that not that many people are riding the bus as much as they used to. And by adapting to what's going on in the world, LRT will be great to continue having more riders within the community and giving them job opportunities to get to throughout the city. LRT would also be faster for them to get to jobs and also provide the community with job opportunities within, because it takes us multiple buses just to get from one point to the other. But I really just want to say we would love for you guys to continue bringing LRT to the community. I want us to gain value. I want us to have something modern and see some change within the community. I'm 26 years old, and I haven't seen that community change at all, but I've heard so much history of that community, and Atlanta's growing, and I want our area to grow as fast as the city, because we are still the city of Atlanta at Campbellton Road. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Muhammad.
Thank you, guys.
At this time, Ron Shakur.
Good morning, I'm Ron Shakir. God bless America when she's right, and have mercy on her when she's wrong, that she can be guided to the more perfect light. Mr. Parker, before his demise, before his passing, he stated clearly that decisions are made where there's a commitment and ability with money and whether it fits. I think that was one of his last public comments of speaking to the public. And what we see here is of great concern, and the fact is that we need to know the statement of work, the change to the infrastructure, in the impact. To put projects on communities on a road that does not fit is a great displacement in every way. The elderly connecting to their sons and daughters in institutions that they're familiar with. Just to say, I want a rail? No, if it does not fit, we shouldn't go there. The fact is that of a streetcar be reminded of a discriminating environment that we lived in with the history of a streetcar should remind us of the questions, do we want to go back and visit that? I say no, we don't want to go back to no streetcar. The fact is that if we put this project on the black community, it will cause a greater gentrification, a greater displacement that should not be looked on as success. It's a great concern to the culture and shakeup, and I would hope that you give more consideration to such of a project. It was stated from somebody in this board, there's been a lot of heat in the room, but we need light. We need light that we can be guided right. And I would just hope that we would realize that we have institutions, Board of Education and schools, that the environments are going down, down, down. Not down, but enrollments are going down, down, down. It's been questioned of closing 166. And they're serious about it now. You know why? Because of the meetings we had at Fort Matt, we had good opportunity to hear what these concerns, and at the YMCA, we had them. And if we put this rail on, you can't go over 285. It's too heavy. But you're going to go to this 166. And they told us, well, Ron, you know, that's nothing permanent. That we don't know for sure. But yes, this what the object would be. They would close 166 to bring work on Campbellton Road and projects. We like housing on projects. We like mothers and fathers to be able to stay in our communities and not be developed out as some kind of good thing. I appreciate the extra time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shakir. Tawana Miller.
Good afternoon, board members. My concern is employee support. As a former employee for MARTA, a former bus operator, I personally know there are far too many bus operators and employees that are facing homelessness or are homeless. And supervisors and people in managerial positions are not able to individualize their emergency or their need and give them the support that they need. Not only are they not given the proper support, I was forced to resign. I love working at MARTA. I love working for MARTA. At this current time, I cannot because I have housing issues. And instead of being given the support that I needed, I was forced to resign. I take pride in being a good bus operator. I take responsibility for my absences and things of that nature, but if there's an emergent need, I feel like employees should be able to look to their supervisors, look to the people in charge, and get the help they need. And that way, we are able to keep employees that deserve to be kept, and service employees that deserve that particular accompaniment. It's a really big issue. It's a really big problem, and I'm speaking from experience. I know it firsthand, and too many times I was told, I went to someone to get help, and I was told to call someone else, and I was told to call someone else and call someone else, and no one was able to help me. And inevitably, I was forced to resign. And like I said, I love MARTA.
Thank you so much. I have two names on this form Barry Muhammad. Is there Barry Muhammad? Common Patrolling, that may be the name of the community organization. 10,000 Fearless? He's not speaking?
No, he has no comments.
Pardon me?
No comments from him.
No comments? Great, thank you. Louis Mohammed?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the MARTA Board of Directors. My name is Student Minister Louis Muhammad, and I'm here to represent, on behalf of the Southern Regional Student Minister of the Nation of Islam, Student Minister Abdul Sharif Muhammad, and Muhammad's Mosque, number 15. We are located at 3642 Campbellton Road, and we have a great interest in the project that's about to take place. We're also members of NPUN as well. NPUP as well. And we're here today to state that we're in full support of the $300 million funding of MARTA LRT in the Campbellton Road area. But what we want to make sure is that we will be looking to make sure that there's no displacement of the homeowners in that area, that there's a greater safety afforded to that area, better lighting, cameras, housing, crosswalks, and of course, we're looking for this to bring economic development to this area. So we're here today on behalf of Student Minister Sharif Muhammad to say that we're in support of the LRT project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad. Melissa Hughley. Welcome, Ms. Hughley.
Thank you. Good afternoon. First of all, I'm from Seven Hills community. A while back, you all was considering changing the name of Lakewoods train station. Seven Hills has not heard anything in reference to that. So we would like an update on whether or not that's actually going to happen in our area. As far as for the light rail and the bus rail, I am for bus rail in Campbellton Road area. My concern is that Campbellton Road up near Oakland City has a very narrow streetway. So I am concerned of the property that you all would have to acquire to actually build that road. And as you're going down Campbellton Road, it actually expands outward near Delowe. So you still would have to actually buy and acquire property. So that is a major concern for me. I do think that when you're looking at Los Angeles model, you need to make sure that you are looking at the streets because the roads in Los Angeles are wider. So it does accommodate that. Far as the rail service on Campbellton Road, it would not be feasible. Simple the fact of it is that those streets are not wide enough for it to actually happen. Maybe in the near future, but right now I don't think that it will happen. It will cost too much. And it will actually eventually gentrify everyone in that community. That community will cease to exist. So if we're going to do anything, we have to look at what is feasible, what is right, and what we need to do to accommodate the individuals there. We can't look at the cost all the time. Sometimes cost is not effective. We need to look at what is right for the individual peoples in that community. Rapid rail is not right for them right now. They may want it. I don't think it's feasible, and it's going to cost too much, and it will gentrify them, and they will lose their homes, and everybody will experience homelessness in Atlanta. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hughley. Mr. Sumlin, are you ready? Yes. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, Board of Directors and MARTA team. Thank you for allowing me to speak here today. I'm a born and raised resident of Atlanta and reside. My situation is unique because I reside in both a Beltline and Campbellton Road corridor neighborhood. I would like to say that after faithful contributions to the system, the Campbellton Road and surrounding neighborhoods, the corridor, deserves a platinum system. Platinum means equitable, being able to have heat, AC, air conditioning, on-time service, ADA. And with developers migrating to the southwest area, they'll be more receptive to a light rail system versus a bus rapid transit system. The economic returns is higher if a light rail system is endorsed per several developers. The researchers for the team, we request in any project moving forward that actual visuals be presented to the community as opposed to how this project came out to the community. They were just sketches. They were not actual visuals. And that's it. Thank you. And I just say thank you for hopefully, and as we get to our final decision of the project, that we keep the community in mind as we make our final decision. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And the last green sheet I have is none other than Ms. Deborah Scott. Ms. Scott,
Good afternoon.
good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How is Mr. Scott?
He's quite well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. My name is Deborah Scott. I'm the CEO of Georgia Stand Up. In fact, I just got my mail, and I'm holding a brochure from Congressman David Scott that has our photo in it from when we had the ribbon cutting for Clayton County. And so we've been following these issues for a long time. We have been working with and for the community for several years regarding transit equity. We are very concerned about this project because, as you know, transit equity is an issue as well as infrastructure equity. As I'm on my way to Washington next week, as we're advocating for more resources for Build Back Better, we would like to be able to talk about how MARTA and the city and other collaborators figured out a way to make this community whole. As you know, this number 83 is the number 2 bus in the entire system. So the community engagement was not done correctly, period. It wasn't done correctly. So I know that that's going to slow your project down, but if you don't get it right now, we'll be looking at this project 10 years from now, and you're going to hear environmental injustices that took place, equity injustices that took place. So what we want you to do is to slow this project down and really do robust community engagement in person, not just virtually, and to include the residents of the area in the decision-making process. The way this has been done has not been done correctly. We have attempted to try to help people to understand the severity of what is happening, and I'm not sure whether it's being received, but I just want to take this moment just to say, figure it out. We're here to help, but you got to get this one right. There's too much at stake. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. In full disclosure, I asked about Mr. Scott because he is a member of mine. So, thank you. Is there any other comments at this time? This is the last green sheet I have. Thank you. At this time, I ask for approval of the January 15th, 2022 and the February 10th, 2022 Board of Directors meeting minutes. Do I have a second? Let us vote at this time. The motion has passed. Now we'll have our committee reports. External Relations, Mr. Ash.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. The External Relations Committee met on Thursday, February 17th, 2022, and received the following briefings. A, fiscal year 22, second quarter advertising and sales revenue. B, track renovation Our fourth update, C, the MARTA REACH program. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Ash. At this time, Planning and Capital Programs, Mr. Pond.
Madam Chair, the Planning and Capital Programs Committee met on Thursday, February 24th, 2022, and approved the following resolutions. A, resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of Central Planning Consulting Professional Services, RFP P50097. B, resolution authorizing the disposal of permanent easements and temporary construction easements to DeKalb County, Georgia, for traffic signal upgrades at 7 locations along MARTA's east line between East Lake and Kensington Stations, DeKalb County, Georgia. I request approval of these resolutions.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Let us vote. Thank you, Mr. Pond. The resolution has passed.
The committee received the following briefings: structural inspection engineering services, and D, quick delivery project procedures. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Pond. Operations and Safety, I believe the report will be read by the Vice Chair, Ms. Abdul Salam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Operations and Safety Committee met on Thursday, February 24th, 2022, and approved the following resolutions. A, resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of threat and vulnerable assessment, training, and exercise, RFP P47755. B, resolution to rescind the award to Tyler Technologies Incorporated and approval of award to Central Square Technologies, LLC, for Police Computer-Aided Dispatch Records Management System, RFP F466669. C, resolution authorizing the award of a single source contract for the procurement of brake system overhaul and repairs for Atlanta Streetcar, RFP P49950. And D, resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for airport end-of-line rail car cleaning, P49173. I request approval of these recommendations and resolutions.
So moved.
Let us vote.
Who seconded it?
Thank you, Ms. Abdul Salam.
Madam Chair, the committee received the following briefing. A, FY 22 December Key Performances Indicators, KPI, on rail operations. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
And let me state that the resolutions have passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, I did not. I had a difficulty getting in. Excuse me, please let it be known it's 4. Great, it has changed. Thank you so much. At this time, we will hear from the Business Management Committee Chair, Mr. Frierson.
Madam Chair, the Business Management Committee met on Thursday, February 24th, 2022, and approved the following resolutions. Resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of Rapid 7 Managed Monitoring Services, RFPP P50073, utilizing the State of Georgia contract. Item B, a resolution authorizing the renewal of excess workers' compensation insurance coverages. Item C, a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of an automatic parking and revenue control system, RFP P40193. I request approval of these resolutions. I'm sorry, the last item was item D, a resolution authorizing the approval of the 2022-2025 Title VI program. I request approval of these resolutions.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you. It was recorded properly this time, Mr. Durrett.
The committee received the following briefing.
The resolution has passed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The committee received the following briefing, a briefing on the FY 2022 December financial highlights and financial performance indicators. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Frierson. There are 3 other resolutions that are, time is of the essence. Let us hear from Manjeet.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the board. Shelley Peart is here to provide the presentation on this item.
Good afternoon, Chair Scott and members of the board and Mr. Greenwood. Next slide. I'm sorry, let me go over the first slide. So the Planning Department is here to request resolution authorizing a 6-month contract extension and an increase in our authorized budget for our planning, support, and technical services contract. Thank you. Next slide. Just wanted to go over, these are the things that we want to go over with you. We're going to share an overview of what we do in the Planning Department, what the planning support contract does, a little background, some key activities we've accomplished, and also we'll share the board requests and our staff recommendation. Next slide, please. So an overview of the Planning Department. The planning and project development is responsible for the planning, design, scheduling, and monitoring of bus and rail services, conducting long-range planning studies, which include ridership modeling, identifying future locations for capital expansion projects, guiding system expansion projects from initiation through conceptual design, and utilizing local and federal funding processes. Next slide, please. Our planning consultant services that, sorry, I'm missing my page. Planning consultant services provide necessary and critical support for the development and implementation of our planning, real estate, and transit-oriented development activities, including corridor planning studies, conceptual preliminary engineering, community outreach support, technical services, and these services are delivered by the 3 prime firms here, WSP, HNTB, and AECOM. Next slide, please. We also wanted to just point out just a few key activities that we have accomplished over the last 3.5 years. Currently, we have over 20 projects in various stages of development. We are and still are providing TOD and real estate and communications technical support and assistance. Clayton County, we've had a lot of success there. We're very proud of that. Clayton County South Lake BRT, we've received approval from FTA to enter into project delivery. We have also received our CE on the maintenance facility for Clayton County. We're at about 30% concept plan approval for the O&M facility as well. Another key activity for us is the Summerhill BRT project. We are, the planning department that is, we completed our 30% concept plans. We received our CE back in June of last year. We also executed our paper grant agreement with FTA. And another, I thought Mr. Russell was going to be here so I could give him a nod, but the Georgia BRT project that we're also completing our 30% design on, we received $100 million for that work. Another key thing that we're doing in the planning department is the next gen bus, which is our bus network redesign, and that is still ongoing, but we're really moving along on that front. Next slide, please. So why do we need your approval for this? We need a contract extension because our current authorization expires in a mid-fiscal year, and that's January 23rd of 2023. We also need an increase in our funding because the current funding amount of $69.3 million, it will only take us through authorization of fiscal year 2022. So because of the growth that we've experienced in the planning department, we have had a lot more project, planning studies and different things that increased our demand, and so we need to actually add some more dollars to that. Next slide, please. Past authorization. So in 2018, the board actually approved this contract that we're in to the tune of, it was about $40 million. Again, in 2019, we received an additional $26 million. And just a few weeks ago, we had a contingency by the interim GM of $3.3 million. So our existing contract, authorization contract that is for $69.3 million. Because of the growth, as I said before, for fiscal year 23, we need an additional $30 million. And it's broken down in that for the existing contracts that we have right now, they're about at $21.2 million. And the additional work that we're planning on taking on for fiscal 23, we needed about another 8.8. So that's the grand total of $30 million, and that's our ask for this request. So the next slide is just basically the staff is requesting a 6-month contract extension and a $30 million increase. Any questions?
Do we have any questions? Yes, Mr. Mullis.
Thank you for that presentation.
Sure.
I know WSP is from the famed Parson Brinkerhoff, which was for the very first general consultant for MARTA back in 1972. And they've done a lot of heavy rail around the world, quite frankly.
Okay.
Help me understand the experience of HNTB and AECOM in the most recent rail project, LRT, in, say, Charlotte, North Carolina, or Orlando, or Dallas, DART, or the metro in Houston, or Salt Lake City.
I don't have that information, but I could get that for you. I know they've done a lot of work for us, especially HNTB over the years. I think they were part of MATC when we had MATC at MARTA, but I can get that information for you. I don't have that right now.
So you don't know if we have the capacity or capabilities in this contract for firms and staff that worked on LRT in those cities?
No, I think we do. I thought your question was more to the telling you about what they've done in other cities.
Right.
Right. I don't know what they've done in other cities right now, but I know they have worked in other cities, and they're working with us as well. And I can get you that detailed information.
So can I ask another question?
Sure.
When we put together the RFP for the services, what were we asking for capacity? It seems that we had a lot of BRT success and funding.
Mm-hmm.
Were we trying to get LRT success and funding when we were looking for the capacity and the skill sets?
You're referring to the current contract or
Yes, ma'am.
the current contract? I'm pretty sure that the current contract addressed having experience in both BRT and light rail. And that was a component of what we put out. I think it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I'm sorry, I wasn't here at the time, but I'm pretty sure that it is because those are some of the work that we're doing right now. We're studying LRT, BRT, ART, yes, heavy rail, commuter rail. Those are just some of the modes that we're studying.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Thank you. I don't- It's up now. Yep. Okay. Now
Mr.
questions? Go ahead, Mr. Bell.
Just a comment. When they go through this procurement process, it's very detailed with a scoring system, and HNTB would have never gotten to the table if they didn't have strong capabilities in that area, number one. And number two, from my past experience, they're one of a handful of national firms that in transit work and all phases of transit work. So this organization is very well served by extending their contract, from my view, anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Pond. Mr. Ash?
So I'm planning on supporting the item today on behalf of staff recommendation of it. But it strikes me that this is, in general, over the last decade or so that I've been here, we haven't had to do this very often. Because this is something that I think in normal course would have been handled through the budget process. So the idea that we're coming up with a contract that expires mid-budget year, and we have to come back and ask for significant sums of money to patch the budget is, in my view, and you know, this isn't a judgment about any of the people, and certainly not you who got sent up here to ask for it, but that's a failure of the system, or at least it's a shortcoming of the system. So, you know, I will happily support this today, but I would encourage us to try and manage in a way that we're not doing this as part of the ordinary course. And I don't think it has been the ordinary course. I just don't want to see us get there. That's my
Duly
point.
noted. Thank you.
This was added to the agenda. Normally, this would have went through, verify for me which committee?
The planning committee.
The planning committee?
Yes, ma'am.
That's a good question. It was added, I'm not sure why it was not originally. Mr. Pond, can you tell me, since you're the chair of the planning committee?
Manjeet briefed me about that due to the timing, they wanted to go ahead and get this to the board, so I think he would be better served to answer the question
Thank
why
you.
they wanted to accelerate that.
I also received the information from him. That's why I know it was added. I wasn't sure of the exact details as to why it wasn't with the original committee resolutions.
I think it's a couple of things. One is the expanding workload that planning and project development has in that department. And with that expanding workload, getting a handle on that and planning out ahead so we don't have to Director Ash's point, have to come back and do this more than one time. So it's getting coordinated so we can move forward effectively.
But if the current contract doesn't expire for another 10 months or 11 months, don't we have time to go through the regular committee process on this?
So the dollar amount is the other key piece of this, and we wouldn't have sufficient funds to complete the work that we have before us in the pipeline that's existing and that we see coming.
Okay.
I'm very disturbed right now.
Mr. Mullis, go ahead.
I'm very disturbed right now that we've known about this more MARTA program going on, and we've known that the workload, we had a timeline, and this to be rushed on us, and I'm very disturbed right now, and I would like for it to go through the regular process. And I haven't gotten a good answer on the capabilities and the skills of this team. I am very supportive of staffing up. I'm very supportive that we get the staff that we need and make the right decisions. But as a City of Atlanta board member, I want us to do it right. People are telling us that we need to do it right. And I want to make sure that we're resourcing this contract with the right people who can give us, you know, the pluses and minuses. And it's not the planning staff's fault. The world changed on us in 2021, and there are new opportunities for us to consider. But I'm very concerned about not voting for a $30 million increase on a planning contract for 6 months. I'm just going to express that.
Excuse me, Ms. Hardage first, and then Mr. Pond.
Well, I guess my question is this: since there seems to be some concerns about the process, will it make a huge difference in the next 30 days that it goes through the regular process and goes back to planning and then back to the board next month in April? Is there are we going to miss any opportunities?
Yes, we do. We do miss a few opportunities because, as I previously stated, we're currently out of, I won't say funding. It's not the funding that we're missing. It's the authority to spend to a certain point. So we have our consultants on board. They're already here. They're qualified. They're working. We just have a whole lot more work that we're giving them to do, and we need them to do it in a timely manner. We have a year in which to really complete the work that we have, and so that's the reason why we kind of jumped ahead, because we needed to try to catch up so that we could issue the work so that we can keep things moving. If we waited another 30 days or another 45 days, it's going to put us behind, and we're just trying to make sure that we can keep all our studies moving ahead. And it's no other reason than that we're really just trying to keep moving and not slow the process down. And it's also, the $30 million is not for 6 months. It's going to cover the entire 12-month fiscal year of fiscal '23.
Mr. Pond?
Obviously, there's some concern about this amount of money coming up with having this work to be done over the next 10 months or whatever. Is there a way to just issue a small amount of funding for this contract to keep moving and come back for the balance? I mean, they could work for 30 or 45 days. It seems to be there should be some funding there then you could come back and address the concerns.
Again, what we could do is, I would rather get the funds so that we know that we have fiscal year '23 approved and ready to go, and not slow the consultants down. But if the board wishes to give us something, half of it, or, to kind of keep us moving, but again, we would just have to come back and ask for an additional, the rest of it. The work that we have right now, we're continuing the studies that we're doing, and we have new work that is constantly being asked of us from our jurisdictions. And for that reason, and that reason only, we are giving new work, additional work to our consultants. And we want to be able to do this so that we can provide the answers to the very question of what should we do for, not to pick on Campbellton, because we have a lot of other projects just as important, but Campbellton Road. The question asked today about, well, should it be LRT? Should it be BRT? We've had a request, slow things down, move things up. But we want to be able to provide those answers, and to do that, we need to make sure that we have funding in place and that we can keep the projects moving and not slow the process down. We also have, the FTA, small grants application that we're trying to get into for a lot of these projects. We're trying to key ourselves so that we're there, ready to be able to get first picks at the funding. We don't want to lose out. Georgia has consistently been last in getting funding, and that will happen if we start slowing things down. So right now, I would just encourage you, the staff does recommend, after hours and hours of discussion of should we go ahead with this, and we all concluded, yes, that's the right thing to do to keep us moving.
Mr. Durrett?
Al actually asked my question because I wanted to see if there was something we could do that we would be more comfortable with in terms of the scale of the ask that would tide us over, so that we could have a full discussion of this and then make the next decision next month. That was going to be my recommendation.
Mr. Mullis? And then we'll hear from Mr. Greenwood.
One last question. Do we owe this team money for past work that we haven't been able to pay them?
What team, sir?
The consultants, the planning consultants. Do we owe them?
Do we owe them money? No, sir.
So there's no outstanding invoices that we have to rush this through or anything like that?
No.
And so to our esteemed colleagues over here point, is there a smaller amount of money that we can kind of keep them going and bridge? I don't want them to be working for free, or that we owe them 60 or 90 or 120-day invoices out there. Is there a small?
And Mr. Greenwood?
I mean, that's a question, please feel free to come back to if there's an answer that you can provide today. But what I would say in recognition of the issue is, firstly, yes, the reason there was a lot of discussion about this is that staff is not pleased that we're in this position to actually come back outside of the process and ask for this extension. I will say that, you know, what I've heard in discussions on this topic is MARTA we have put extra pressure on Manjeet's staff to make sure that our capacity to spend is strong and that we are expediting to the greatest extent possible. And so I do believe that this realization comes from a lot of review, a lot of analysis, and someone looking up and saying, if we keep doing this, if we're to actually achieve what we've been asked to do, we are going to run out of this capacity. But what I would ask you to consider and address, you know, for the board, and it's an answer I don't know, if the consultants are on site right now and we have a cash flow and everything's fine, what happens if we do get to the point that we run out of funds? Do the consultants leave the property, go elsewhere, and does that have an impact on our ability to resume when the funds come on?
Yes, if consultants have to demobilize and then mobilize again, that is definitely disruptive.
I have a question. When I read the recommendation for the board action, it says approval of a 6-month contract extension, which would indicate that we are good until the end of the year. Is that correct? A 6 months extension to 2023 would be 6 months after the end of the year. Is that correct?
Let me see how to answer this. So the request today is not for funds or authorization for the current fiscal year that we're in. We're in fiscal year 22, and it ends June 30th of 2022. Fiscal year 23 begins July 1st, 2023. The current planning support and technical services contract that we are all operating under right now actually ends on January 23rd, 2023. So the contract with our 3 prime consultants, we have it for 6 months, the contract itself. What we want to do is extend that contract so that it will pair up with our financial system of a full a full fiscal year, full 12 months. So that's the first request. So let's extend their contract. So in order to do that, we then would have to make sure that we have funds that would authorize us to pay them. Like when the board gives us permission to spend money, you guys are saying, yes, you can spend up to this amount. And so right now we have the authority to spend up to $69.3 million for this existing contract. The unfortunate news, and we will do better, as Board Member Ash said previously, in making sure that we have our funds and our years lined up, we don't have the authorization that will take us through for those first 6 months of the existing contract that we have for fiscal 23. So from July 1st till July 1st till January 23rd of 2023, those 6 months, we don't have the authority to issue an NTP right now, which we would have to do in July. We don't have the funds in the contract. So that's what we're trying to get right now. And we also need to add more money onto it, because let's say when they gave us their original scope of work and budget, they were giving us that number based on a 6-month period in which they were going to be working for us. But we want to extend it so that we can get the new contract for fiscal 24 on the same track as MARTA's financial system, which is a 12-month. So we don't have an 18-month contract, so to speak, anymore. We'd have a 24, we'd have a 48, and so on and so forth. So those are the reasons why, and the 2 things that we're asking for is to get additional authorization, which we would need because of the 6 months extension, and just trying to catch up with all the work that we have. And what we're saying is, and it's a good thing that we have this work that we're trying to do, but we need their help and support. And so the ask for the 30.
You know,
Mr. Greenwood.
in hearing I certainly hear support from the board for the general long-term thrust of what we're trying to do, but I think we all understand that there's some apprehension about the bulking it all together. So what I would ask staff to consider is coming back with a, you know, what is required for a 1-month continuity of service so that we have time in this cycle to come back to the board with a more fulsome response based on the questions that we've been hearing.
Yes, we can do that.
Let me,
Who moved? Would you?
Was there an answer? I didn't.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry, yes, for you're requesting a dollar amount.
Yes.
Do you want that dollar amount right now? I can do a quick calculation, just.
Madam
If you
Chair,
divide it by 6 months, it's 2.5 million, but I don't know if it's that simple of math or not. I'm not sure.
Mr. Pond?
we'll wait for Manjeet. Manjeet, I support this amendment, and we'll end up there anyway, I would be pretty sure after we do some detailed analysis, but I think in open disclosure, these are time and material contracts. So this money's awarded and you chip away at it on an hourly basis, time and material basis. So you could take 1 month, 2 months, say 2 months as a % of the whole thing, and just say the board approves $20 million to go forward, and they could amend those contracts very easily for X amount of dollars, and then that could come back before the board. So I don't have the math on top of my head.
Sure, I think probably the simplest thing, unless you have a different number, would be a $5 million increase in the maximum authorized for that contract, and then we can come back the following month through the typical process and see what the board pleases to do.
Okay.
Does that work for you, Shelley?
Can I just want to add.
Just 1 moment, Mr. Mullis. Mr. Pond, your mic was still on. Are you
I'm
finished?
sorry.
I don't want this team to slow down. And it seems that they have an obligation under the current contract to go for the next 6 months. Then they're asking for an additional period of their contract. Mr. Renaud came to us, I believe, in the planning meeting last week and said that he wanted to authorization to go out to solicit for new consultants for that. Is that correct, sir? I'm very supportive of him getting the resources that he needs. I understand that he just got here and that he is trying to buff up his team to handle all of the challenges that he has coming in front of him. I think that this board has already authorized the contract through, is it December the 31st? January the 1st?
January 23rd.
January, I think this board's already authorized this contract to be in place through January the 23rd. What amount of money would allow you to fulfill your obligation from a time perspective under that contract for January the 23rd, 2023?
Mr. Durrett, you have a question?
I think we can get there. If $5 million is what they need for the next month to be able to keep going at the pace we want them to all go and to give you the support you need, we should amend the resolution to do exactly that with the expectation that you will come through the committee process so that we
are revisiting this question in the way that you've asked us to today next month.
Mr. Durrett, are you making a motion to amend the resolution?
If that's the appropriate protocol, then yes, I'm happy to do that, and that would be my motion.
And I'm happy to second.
Thank you.
Sorry to
Question,
act
Mr.
like a
Ash?
lawyer. Is that for a 1-month extension and a $5 million increase?
Yes, that would be sufficient.
Recognizing that what's coming to us next month is the other 5 months and the other $25 million?
Yes,
All right.
amending the resolution would be
I
fine.
will second that motion for an amendment.
It's already been seconded, but thank you. Mr. Durrett, the resolution has been amended. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Bryson, I can't see your mic there. Lift it up a little bit.
Just point of discussion. I mean, I think that we'll be revisiting the same issue again. It's just a gap issue and a funding issue, and I do recognize that when we come back again, these same numbers will probably be presented before us. So I was in favor of the motion today, but I will accept the amended motion based on what has been discussed.
And I think the question is, and this is my comment, it has to do with process and making sure that we go through the proper process through the committee. And therefore, the committee that would be responsible for supporting the resolution and making the resolution will have the background to support the resolution before making it again, to come before us with the full board and have the documents and whatever else they request necessary to support it. And I think that's what we're saying. Is that correct? Yes. Great. Thank you. So let us vote for the amended resolution. Please vote by hand. The amended resolution has passed. Thank you. We have two additional, there was a reverse on me. That was to be number 7, but now we have number 6 from, are we waiting on what would have been number 6? Or are we going to hear that one? Mr. Manjeet, is it Manjeet?
Thank you, Chair and board members. So Larry Prescott's here to assist with the presentation for a somewhat similar matter. So if it's a similar issue, then perhaps we could just consider a similar 1-month approach to this as you did on the prior item.
What would the 1 month look like?
Excuse me? Mr. Ash has a question.
What would the 1-month version of the request you're about to make look like?
I think if we just do $5 million on this, that would be sufficient, and we'd come back through the process.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Does the proposed resolution that will be the additional 1 month as well, is that also under the planning and capital programs?
Yes.
No. Yes?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Pond, you will have your hands very full.
Thank you.
Do I hear a proposed resolution? Well, you already wanted to change it, but yes, go ahead. Tell us what it's for, Mr. Manjeet.
So this is a resolution of the MARTA Board of Directors authorizing an increase in the maximum authorized contract value of the JRMT Joint Venture for Capital Programs Management Services, contract number P43871. The amendment to the resolution would be an increase of $5 million and subject to returning through Planning and Capital Programs Committee next month.
Please raise your hands. The proposed resolution has passed.
Thank you.
Now we have Mr. Jacob Vallow.
This is a revenue conversation, so I'll just baseline it there. First of all, good afternoon. It's always interesting to be last on the agenda. First, I want to welcome Mr. Rod Mullis. Haven't seen you since College Park, and you're groundbreaking there. Congratulations on that. Here today to talk to you about a resolution for authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the joint development of parcel D 4166 at Oakland City Station, RFP P 50136. Next slide, please. So I think this slide is very important, and I listened intently to the public comments. And Mr. and Mrs. Scott's comments were particularly resonated with me because we had generated the slide deck and she used the word holistic. And so as she was speaking, it really made sense in that the reason why we're bringing this to the board today to include into the Campbellton Road conversation is because we want a holistic approach. And we want to do it the right way. We want public engagement before we come out with an RFP, but we are here today because we did receive an unsolicited proposal, a very interesting one for the Oakland City Station, and so we think it would be great for the board to authorize us to begin the community engagement process and the drafting the RFP based on the feedback we get from the community. But this slide is near and dear to my heart. Lines and dots is something that Jeff talked about a lot. Our entire staff believes this. Collie and I did a podcast on it in October. We were invited to do a discussion particularly around Campbellton Road. And why this is important is we think that you cannot disconnect the transit component from the other financial and social outcomes that are needed in the communities in which we serve. So, the work that we do in TOD focuses on education and housing and job creation, but on the resource and utilizing the resources that we have, particularly the land around our stations, and in the future, the land in the corridors in which we're developing transit. Next slide, please. For those of you that don't know, this is looking south towards the Fort McPherson, Tyler Perry, and TD Jakes, soon to be TD Jakes property. You'll see 3 lots at our station area there. Lot 1 is in the foreground, and then 2 and 3. Lot 3 is actually closed with the bus loop for bus 83 on the left-hand side there. Next slide, please. Our total developable area is 10.76 acres. We have done some title work and review of the deeds. This was originally an assemblage of 50 parcels. There's a City of Atlanta on the south side. There's a City of Atlanta easement for wastewater and a venting, but the balance of the deeds are clean. So we're in good shape there. Next slide, please. So parking is really important for this station, and it will continue to be important as the transit infrastructure is delivered. And so right now, lots 1 and 2 have a total of 353 spaces, I think, 80% of which prior to the pandemic were utilized on a regular basis, so 272 spaces. And as we look and work with our colleagues in capital programs, look into the future, of the parking needs for the station, we need to keep in mind opportunities to consolidate and to be more efficient with respect to land use. But I can't forget the replacement parking needs of the station. The land area could certainly be transformed into vibrant mixed-use community that respects the scale of the surrounding area while providing the necessary density to support transit ridership. And redevelopment of the site should be respectful of the established surrounding single-family neighborhoods. The MARTA Transit-Oriented Development Guidelines classify Oakland City Station as a neighborhood station. The guidelines define neighborhood stations as located in primarily residential districts, and their principal transportation function is to help people who live nearby get to work, school, shopping, entertainment, medical services, and other destinations accessible throughout the transit network. Again, the lines and dots. Next slide, please. I am not going to read this slide, but it is important for the record to know that the MRC3 zoning was established for this site, and it does cover a lot of the things that we're hopeful address many of the community's concerns with respect to parking and strip commercial areas not being permitted, how the connectivity into the community, how this site should address connectivity to the community, as well as the mixed use nature of the zoning. Next slide, please. Just a bit of selection of development activity. Obviously, these are not. This is just a short list, but starting on the top portion of the page is the Met project right across from our West End station. Coming south is Lee and White Street, right on the Beltline. Murphy Crossing, which the Beltline has a procurement out for, is another large redevelopment project. Coming further south is the Prologist former Nabisco factory that recently sold. We have had conversations with NPUX about connectivity to the MARTA station, and continue to be involved in that conversation. Jumping to the west side of the station area, so Tyler Perry Studios, of course, and TD Jakes, and then Rise Creative Village, which is a fantastic story of a former APS school is being turned into a really cool project with some affordable housing. Next slide, please. Oh, I forgot the truest Andrew and Walter Young family. My friend Andy Young would. So this is a fantastic facility. It's 15,000 square feet right at the YMCA there, and just wanted to make sure everyone knew about that. So next slide, please. So the Oakland City TOD RFP, should be aware in 2016 there was a Oakland City Fort McPherson LCI study recognizing that it was in 2016. We do have to do a lot of engagement, I think, to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the community. There was a TOD corridor study completed by HRNA in 2021 as part of the capital programs effort in studying the Campbellton area. Certainly positive real estate market activity and very encouraging unsolicited proposal. And you know, we're very aware of Mayor Dickens' request to have MARTA increase density and particularly focus on affordable housing. And so because of those reasons and because of the integration with the transit conversation with the community that is very engaged at this moment, we think the staff is making a recommendation to move forward with the TOD RFP. Next slide, please. So this was a little bit of history. Many of you on the board may remember there was a Oakland City TOD RFP in 2015. They produced one proposal. The RFP was awarded to the developer and then later rescinded. It was 100% low-income housing tax credit senior product, and there was no movement by the developer to change the plan, so it was ultimately rescinded by the MARTA board. But again, this point on the bottom is, I can't stress enough, should have put it in bold. We will ensure that there's proper engagement with the community and the council members to ensure that the RFP includes a request for a balanced approach to this program prior to the RFP being released. Next slide, please. So happy to request the resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the joint development of parcel D4166 at Oakland City Station, RFP P50136, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Do I hear a motion? Do I hear a second?
It's been seconded.
It has? Okay, great. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that there is a unsolicited proposal at this time,
Yes, ma'am.
and the RFP will allow us to receive this proposal as well as others, correct?
That's correct. So when the RFP is issued, the unsolicited proposer actually has to propose again, consistent with the RFP guidelines, and compete. Pursuant to the unsolicited proposal guidelines, if all else is equal among the scoring, then the unsolicited proposer gets the win, if you will, because they initiated the process.
So this holds true for each jurisdiction?
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
that correct? Say, for instance, the unsolicited proposer will now become a solicited proposer, along with other proposers, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so it wasn't sent back to them for being unsolicited?
Correct. They received a notification that the staff had recommended to senior leadership, and we're going to the board to recommend the issuance of an RFP of which they could compete for.
Right, I'm
The
just
development rights.
asking to make sure this stands fair for other jurisdictions.
Absolutely.
Because I had a question about a unsolicited proposal from another jurisdiction that was sent back to them.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I want to make sure that all jurisdictions are treated fairly
Absolutely.
in the proposal process, whether solicited or unsolicited.
Absolutely.
Mr. Mullis? I'm sorry, Mr. Bryson was first, I did see.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate this. So help me understand. So when there is an unsolicited proposal for any of our TOD developments, do they always come to the board for us to consider what they're asking to be done on the property, or is there some type of, I mean, I'm just asking, does it come to the board to do this?
No, that's a good question. Not always. For instance, and I think you're referring to the Indian Creek, maybe unsolicited proposal that came in. We were in the process. We have an open procurement to hire a master planner to conduct community engagement and then take it through a rezoning process with DeKalb County. We informed the unsolicited proposer that we were going to do that, but they proposed anyhow. As part of returning to the board, hopefully in May, with an award for the master planner, we were going to ask for permission to solicit proposals for a TOD RFP. And so the staff had already planned to come to the board, and then in the interim, we had received this unsolicited proposer. So what we informed them is that we were coming to the board to request authorization to issue a TOD RFP within the next several months, and they have every opportunity to compete for that.
So then my follow-up question is that in that situation, what happens is if someone has taken the time to put forth these proposals unsolicited, they've done the work, and they just want to be able to submit it, and then we say to them, well, we need you to wait because of whatever other reason. I find that is somewhat being a little bit counterproductive, because what we want is to at least see what they have to offer. And then once again, if it's just an information purpose or just for us to be briefed, that's all it is.
Sure,
It doesn't
sure.
mean that we have decided to go with them, but we're trying to keep an interest in stimulating more of these proposals, particularly if they're unsolicited, for TOD development around all our transit services, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I just want to make sure how important that is.
Absolutely understood.
Thank you, Mr. Mullis.
Thank you, Chair Scott. Jacob, well done. You guys have been very innovative in making partnerships in the community and working with the NPUs, and so I'm very, very happy to hear that. Just kind of some high-level conversations around the neighborhood. We have a lot of land here, and one of the principles of TOD, as you well know, is mixes of uses and mixes of income. And I know the MARTA policy for a long, long time was to do ground leases, and that was a policy. But I think that this neighborhood could use some affordable home ownership also to take root in the neighborhood schools and take root and be a catalyst for a high-quality grocery store and high-quality food options, So as we evaluate and put together the RFP, and I know that the board's policy is to do ground leases, but if we could figure out a way to carve off a little bit for some fee simple home ownership, that would be exciting for me.
Thanks for your comment. Mr. Ash?
Yeah, so in part, this is an example of a policy we set several years ago coming back into play. And I apologize because I realized today I've sounded more like the old man at MARTA and telling old stories. But part of this is when I first got here, and Jim was here then, I think you and I may be the last two who saw this, but we had a policy that actually permitted us to move forward with unsolicited proposals once they were received. The problem was after about the second or third time that we got one of those, and it got to the board, and the board invariably sent it back thinking, okay, well, it's nice that you're offering us $2 million a year. Maybe if we went out to the market, we could get 2.5 or 3. And so what we did was to try and respect and not waste a proponent's time by saying, we're not going to take this as is. We are fiduciaries of limited public resources. We're always going to want to ask the question, how do we test this on the marketplace to make sure this is the best possible proposal? And that's the answer to the question, like, how do we get here? It's because we realized that this was at least the best we could come up with at the time, balance between respecting the work that was done by the unsolicited proposer, but also respecting our role as fiduciaries for, developers these days. Mr. Mullis knows this, talk about MARTA, particularly MARTA rail stations, as Atlanta's waterfront. They didn't much of it, and Lord knows it's difficult to create any more of it. So anyway, that's where we are. So I appreciate this. I remember the 2016 proposal. I remember that it was really disappointing. I mean, to us, to the community, it was a really underwhelming proposal, and so we took it back at the time. I'm glad to hear that the market, and I'm not surprised, but I'm pleased to hear that the market down there is changing in a way that gives us hope that this can be something we're all proud of.
Thank you, Mr. Ash. One other question I have, is there a fee incurred or paid by the unsolicited proposer?
Yes, ma'am. It's based on the expected value of the total cost of the project. So in this case, they did provide a fee that was $10,000 for what they deemed the expected value of the project.
Right, I understand. But we kept that fee, or did we return it?
We returned it. We ended up returning it, yes.
We are returning
Yes,
it
ma'am.
based upon the RFP to now solicit proposals.
So there's two things to mention. One is that at the CEO's discretion, we can waive the fee,
Okay.
which in this case we did. But if we chose to keep the fee is returned if the proponent does not win the RFP. And in the procurement guidelines, it's stated that the fee is used for processing and evaluating the offer, engaging engineering teams and so forth.
Thank you, Mr. Vallow.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Let us vote. The resolution has passed.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have a great
you.
day.
Are there any other matters to come before the board?
Yes, ma'am, if I may, we do have to address the litigation matter that we discussed in executive session.
Thank you. Will you please discuss?
Yes, ma'am. We would like a request of the board to approve the settlement in the amount of $5 million to settle the case of Michelle Smith v. MARTA and Michelle Smith v. Vincent Mims, Melvin Vaughn, and Ricky Thompson.
Let us vote by show of hands. The litigation matter has passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the board? I would like to acknowledge that we have the mayor of Brookhaven, Mayor Ernest, in the room with us. Would you stand and give us a shout out? Shout out. All right. Thank you so much. Wanted to acknowledge your presence. The MARTA Board of Directors meeting is now adjourned.